the experiences that you're describing bring into question, and it may be kind of a big topic to get into, but about time. And time seems to be really different between what you experience with the Plejarens and when you're traveling and when you're on Earth and that sort of thing. Can you talk a little bit? It's probably hard to talk just a little bit about time, but about your experience of time may be useful for us understanding what you're going through. Can you talk about your experience of time?
Yeah, it doesn't exist. It, it, it for instance, the very first time I experienced that time's an illusion was that one of the things me and Sam Jess like to do is just look out into nothingness, right? And we were in my room, and she got on my lap, or no, it's her room. That's right. And I'm sitting in a chair in front of the window, and she's sitting on my lap, and there's this little, what do you call, like a thing that hangs from a wall or whatever, or a ceiling. And there's a little thing in the middle that would spin, and she spun it, and we took off, and we had what I call traveling, where we're kind of without the body, we're an observer and experiencer all at the same time. And then when we came back, that thing was still spinning. And when we were left, I would have imagined it was hours that we were gone. But when we came back, that thing was still spinning. And I started to learn and understand, I know this is really leaping, but it kind of brings it home in a sense of shortening what the definition of time really is. And that is that, how we think that we are here on Earth, and we're having a life, and we have this physical body and things like that. And then we also recognize that we've had past lives, and we call them past lives, where the actual reality of this is that, it's based on consciousness. Our consciousness and the fragments of that consciousness is what we would consider like a soul. And so the best way to describe it is kind of like the Matrix thing, where like consciousness is on this big flat platform in space, and you have all these little puzzle pieces, like those mats that you put together to do exercise and stuff on. And each of those puzzle pieces is a fragment of the soul, of the entire consciousness. And then you have consciousness, who's this big fat guy with a long gray beard, and he's sitting on a big lazy boy. And in front of him is all these TVs. And on those TVs is a fragment of you playing out a role. And hey, you have a TV series. And so you have all these multiple TVs that are going on at the same time. And what we would believe is dying, you would think that, well, we come back to heaven or whatever, or consciousness or source. And the reality is that we're just a projection, that we've never ever left source. So we're always at source. And our life that we perceive that we're having is just a projection. We're a TV series. And all of these TV series are going on at the exact same time. And so therefore, there's not really time. And you combine all this together, and it would be like the blink of an eye. All these lives, all these things that we're conscious of, and it's just a blink of an eye. There's no real time involved with it.
What I want to get a feeling for is, how different do you feel relative to time when you're with the Plejarens versus when you're on Earth? How do you feel as the similarities or differences that you experience there?
That's a funny thing. There's multiple answers to that, but essentially, generally speaking, what exactly was the question?
The question was,
it's such a big one.
So yeah, I know it's a really big one. It's how do you feel how do you feel that you're so different about your experience with the Plejarens relative to time and your experience on Earth relative to time? How do you feel when you go from one to the other? How do you feel?
It's funny because I never figured. That's one of the things I can't figure out, and I don't care to ask them the question about it, because I've had that experience before where we go around in circles and everybody gets annoyed with me. But when it's like I go on the ship, and I'm on the ship for like I have my phone, I carry my phone with me and stuff, and it keeps track of time that I would have here, back here on Earth. And it doesn't, there's no time zones. It's always Florida. And, hours will pass and maybe days, right? And when I come back and I'm here back on Earth, maybe a day has passed, where in relation it may have been felt like 3 days according to my time tracker on the ship, or vice versa. It's always something I have to catch up on, because I got things I got to do here on Earth, because I still live here on Earth, and so when I come back, I'm like, I have to check the date and the time. And so I've just sort of accepted that it's a blur. Time is different when I'm with them than it is here on Earth.
How can your phone work up there?
They did it for me.
They
Sam
did
just
it.
wanted a phone so she could talk to me. So I gave her one of my own phones, and they did whatever they do in order to make that work. And so when I'm up there, I can connect
with us here back on Earth.
Yeah.
And we don't know the difference. There's no difference. Wow. Speaking of Earth, you had talked about something you called the flat Earth. That is different. It's not what we talk about here on our Earth when we talk about the flat Earth. Of course, we know it's round. It's not flat. But what is this flat Earth that you describe?
I call it flat Earth. They took me to a place where Sam Jess was going to do a ceremony, and it was kind of odd because, if you ever seen those pictures, those space pictures or whatever, where they have like a hunk of ground, a flat hunk of ground with a bubble around it. And, it's similar to that, except for there's no bubble around it. What they've done is they've taken a collection of, debris and brought them together in a way that it would grow on its own, kind of like the way the Earth did. It's got iron core and stuff like that. So basically, it's going to go through the same motions as long as the conditions are the same. And so what they'll do is they'll put it in an orbit which is favorable to them, and they will manage that for whatever long it takes, millions of years, for it to completely grow. But it keeps expanding, but you don't really see a lot of that taking place. But you do see changes in the environment. Like they put they keep using the word soup, because Homer here doesn't understand. So it's a list of ingredients, in a sense, that they use in order to manipulate what's existing. And so you kind of look at Earth, and that's the way they describe it to me, kind of look at Earth and how the processes work, why we have an atmosphere, why there are layers of atmosphere, what creates, that the ability to breathe, on the surface of the Earth, and so on and so forth. And so in miniature, basically that's what's occurring with this, but it's also sped up because they're able to keep it in the right relativity, in a proximity to where it is in the solar system, in order to enable that growth to happen. So instead of maybe millions of years, it would be thousands of years. And since I've been visiting this little place in space, that it's I've seen changes already in the vegetation and stuff. Not necessarily on its size, but you can kind of see that there's a curvature occurring, and it's a massive place. But it's cool as hell, because it's like going out into a beautiful part of a desert or something with orangey type soil and things like that. Plus they've had some structures that were already there and for ceremony and things like that. So it's very reflective of being on Earth, but there's some things that are different.
What about the sun around this flat Earth? The appearance of a sun or a star, and what's in the sky? Can you describe that at all?
It would be like if we put a big hunk of rock in our solar system and kept it in a specific orbit.
I guess, does it always face the sun, or does it rotate, or kind of like the Earth does? We have day and night, or What do you think that's about?
I don't know the exact specifics of that, but what you see occurring is that they'll have like daytime and nighttime, but it's you don't have like a high noon. You have like dusk and dawn, uh, that turn on and off. So there is times that it's dark for a short period of time, and there's times that it's somewhat light, but it's never very, very bright. And it follows the celestial object. So I don't know exactly. I haven't been there for a year or something in order to evaluate that. All I know is it's a really fun place to be, and time's always limited. And so I get as much as I can out of it without going into the brain.
Tell us about some of the other types of entities you've met at some of these ceremonies. Do they all look like Plejarens, or do they look different, or different personalities, or are they all alike?
There's many species that I've met. Some of them I've been introduced to, and some I've only seen. And we got two different ranges. And one of them was in the very beginning, where Sam Jess, we were in the pod and went underwater deep in the sea. And it was out near Hawaii, where, inside the rock, a window appeared, and I saw three individuals that we would consider like grays. And the word grays, I used the word gray and named them grays because the description, if you go on the search on internet, you see thousands of different interpretations of a gray, and which I had asked them about. But anyways, they reminded me of a gray, so let's go with that. And they waved to me, and they have like three large long fingers, and the typical head and eyes and all that. And so, but later they wanted to meet me, and so they came to the ship. Now their environment is quite different than what ours is, and so plus their being is quite different. So long story short, they have holodecks. I call them holodecks, right? Similar thing that you see on Star Trek or something. And there is, we went in. Sam Jess prepared a room that when they came to the ship that we could go into, and it was kind of like a blend of an earth jungle and also like a swamp sort of thing. And it was beautiful, but it was kind of a blend where, I didn't recognize the plants, but they were similar and stuff like that. And it wasn't real bright in there. So that it was kind of dim in the lighting. And there was also a mist like in the air. And so I asked her about, how does this work? They don't have the same, or they have different environmental requirements than we do. And so she kind of showed me on this little screen she showed, where she said, now when they enter, their frequency will activate in that room, their environment. It would be like an invisible bubble that goes around them. Now they can make this ship wide, or they can put it into a smaller area. And so you see me and her having the same environment, where in this little bubble around us, where they had a different one. And so what it was is, it's something that they have in the ship that will detect their frequency and what type of being they are and such, and provide that environment that's you don't see. And it's just there, and they're able to breathe and function normally. And so are we. And so anyways, they come to the ship, and I sat across from them, and they explained to me that they were the ones who brought the Plejarens into, what I guess you would call modern type sort of age or whatever. They initiated it. In other words, they were the ones that made contact with them. The problem is that, like with people of Earth, they cannot connect very well. It's very difficult for them because they have humor and they have emotion, but it's not necessarily easily to detect. And so, like in a further meeting that I had with them, I really got bored in a very short period of time in communicating with them, because there's just like, there's not a connection. It's not familiar. And so it's kind of tends to be a little bit boring. Like when you ask a question, there's a pause, and then you get the answer, and so on. So you have races that are what I label as humanoid, kind of like us, right? 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. Now, these people, from my understanding, are millions of years in advance of any of us. And they've been here for a very, very long time. And there's millions of them in the water, right? And so the other people that we would come across were more similar to us. Now, there may be subtle differences, or they're not. There's never been really an extreme difference. And when I ask about that, and the answer was that because we connect, right? We can talk to this kind of individual, this guy, like there's a couple of them that I named as Vulcans because they kind of reminded me of the Star Trek characters, not necessarily they don't really have pointed ears, but they have kind of similar looks and a more of a chisel or a pointed face with a smaller chin, and their ears are very long and narrow. And so anyways, in other words, we were able to communicate and we understand things. We have a humor, we have emotion, and there's so all these beings that they kind of connect with. There's no galactic federation or anything like that, but you have this. Everybody works on natural law. So the people that are like each other, maybe some have tails and some, so on and so forth, differences, but essentially we're the same and we're able to talk and speak. Where there's what I call the bug people, and they're kind of scary looking and everything, but they don't connect at all, right? It's for communication and stuff is almost impossible. But what they do understand is natural law, about like a planet or something. Let's say they want the certain soils from a planet. They know enough not to destroy it or alter that planet in any other way other than collect what they need. But when they collect it, they collect a lot of it. These bug type people, to me, are similar to like an insect. It'd be like having a conversation with an insect. And but they're very efficient at the things that they do. So when they say they collect a bunch of soil that is useful to other species and stuff, well, they'll collect all the soil that they can without disrupting that planet, and then provide it to the others that they don't of what they don't need. And so they all abide by the natural law, and but the communication is very difficult. So what I'm getting to is the people that I've witnessed or experienced as different species are somewhat similar to us, or very similar to us, even though they may look a little different, and the ones that I hang out with usually have pretty big eyes.
So now, Z, you described yourself as an accidental contactee. What makes you different from what we consider contactees that are from here on Earth that go up there? Some are abducted, some are just more or less invited to come up and learn, or how does that work?
I call it an accident. I mean, everything in life is like we have a destiny, right? And we're going to start at A and we're going to end at B. And along that way, there will be people that will cross our path that are predestined. And we have a choice. And depending upon how prepared they are and we are when we meet, of how eventful that meeting will be. And there's also free will that's associated with it. Not that we're not going to get to B to finish, but we can kind of drift off in different directions in that process. And so when you say accidental, well, that's the best way to describe it. Nothing is accidental in anybody's life, and we kind of recognize that. But at the same time, we have the free will where we can experience other things, and as well as those that we are predestined to meet. So I call it accidental contact because I was in the middle of a jungle. I wasn't looking for somebody like Sam Jessen in the jungle, and I didn't expect to be abducted, and I kind of expected a anal probe, which didn't happen. I expected to be eaten, which didn't happen. So I call it accidental.
The contactees that you met on one of the ships, how are they different than the experience that you're having?
There's a individual that is kind of like the Dalai Lama or the Pope or whatever. She's a very spiritual being that people respect and look towards. And I call her Mother. And I brought Mother into the picture because I always ask her, saying, I want to be a contactee. And like her and the captain in unison will tell me, no, you're too old. And the reason before that is that, you know, the way contact works isn't quite the way that, you know, people are led to believe. And what they do is they find these very young individuals, and what they'll do is they will train them and, you know, kind of like teach them these spiritual things. And that leads me to talk about like magic, right? What we see as magic. Um, Magic, like somebody levitating. We think of that as magic, or, you know, something miraculous, or like a miracle, or a person that is able to heal other people by a touch, you know, without even acknowledging them, and so on and so forth. That's what we would call as magic. And the reality of that is we have that capability. We are so far unevolved. You know, we're basically still cavemen in so many senses, because our if you look like an ape has already reached its evolution, right? They're very smart, and, you know, but they were limited to a point of where they learned how to use a tool, and that's about as far as they're going to ever go. And um, with all things remaining constant, and the humans, I believe, I don't know this for a fact, but I think we've reached our level of evolution in the sense of our brain. You know, there's a big difference between brain and mind, but in our brain. And if you know, like, you have all these places in your brain that store memories right up until we die, no matter how long we live. You know, there's always room for that, right? And so we use our whole brain. You know, for in essence, it's all being used. It's just that we still have all this space left over in that brain that will take us to our next destination, in a sense of beings, and that is that to fill with love. Love is the connection that activates the magic. So these miracle things that you're seeing is an act of love. And they come from the more that you fill this empty space in the brain with files of love, the more abilities that you discover that you actually have. So we are at the bottom state, and in that sense. And as we start to realize this, which is where natural law comes into, is you're able to do so many more things with each level of love that you add in your mind. And there's so many different examples of that, as like the way they treated me and how they saw me as we evolved in our relationships on the ship. And everything is about love. I introduced like hugging to them, and it became an addiction. And yeah, it's an example of, you know, because they're so busy with what they're doing, but they at an instant they'll stop. If you walk in the room, say, and you want to talk to them or whatever, or share something with them, but it's kind of like the hugging. Once I introduced it, I almost regretted it, because when I go on the ship, I already know immediately that it's going to be about an hour, because I have 6 people to hug. And when you hug, it's so different than what we do as hugging. You actually become that other person, that individual, and you can feel them and sense them. And it's not as though there's 2 bodies there. It's as though there's one body, one frequency. And it just energizes you. It gives you so much power. And then, like, there's things like sensing that I've talked about. I leave little nuggets in the book for people to pick up on if it resonates with them. And sensing is something that where you can activate anything. You know, it's like a manifestation, but manifestation would be very weak in order to define this, because our language just doesn't cover many of these things that I'm talking about. But for instance, the sensing process is where you just go blank, or meditation, whatever you want to call that. You go to a point where you see something of unconditional love that you have experienced in your life. And when you do that, you see it, and you keep repeating it over and over again as you witness this, and, you know, whatever that event may be. And everybody seems to have a go-to. Mine was my first rescue. And you keep seeing this again and again until it becomes real, where you don't know that you're not there again. And when you reach that point, whatever your intention was, not the one you say, this is my intention, but things that are truly your intention that's happened over a period of time, it activates, and you're unlimited to whatever it is that you're seeking at that moment. So as far as contactees go, it's pretty much the children, and they will become a reflection of us. So in other words, the consciousness will change as people witness what these abilities of these children have, because they're already filling their brain with love, these files of love that's lodged in their brains. So, like there's an example I always use about this little girl in China that walks down this row of all these dead plants, and as she walks by, they come to life. And there's a video of that. And this is just one example. And they're not to be teachers. They're not to be anything other than an example. And so people will see this, and positives attract, negatives repel. So what they are doing, and the things that people will see them or witness them do, will be a positive event, and that they will be attracted to it. So that's a contactee, and I'm too old to go through that process. So it's more for the young. And the whole the end purpose of this is that the whole world becomes a conscious state where you don't need governments or anything. And then we're able to understand natural law and to come together.
Okay, one question that I think almost everybody wonders is, will they be able, or would they even consider saving humanity from ourselves, our own delusions, our own inhumanities to man? Will they come save us?
No, that's my impression. I mean, why would they? There's no point in it, unless we can do it. And that's the purpose of the contact and teaching these children the magic, right? Which is basically love and processing, and the attraction to that, so that other people will gravitate to that individual. And that individual is not allowed to be a teacher or, promote these sort of mystical things. They just have to live their lives, and they will live their lives in an advanced state of consciousness due to the lessons that are being taught, from the aliens. And it's like the 100th monkey, right? One attracts two, which attracts four, and so on and so forth. And possibly in 50 to 75 years, we will have a consciousness where the people are the power, and the natural law is becoming understood, and why it's necessary. And we won't need governments or anything else. And at that point, if we make it to that point, then we'll be ready for contact, the contact that people expect. So yeah, the answer is, we have to save ourselves.
I know that most of the crew has come down to Earth to play with you here on Earth. And they look around and see things. What do they think? Because they've never been here before. What's their impression of Earth when they're here?
Think about it. We're consciousness, and there's no time. There's no living being as we perceive it to be. And it's just an experience. It's something to add to the whole. And so we're just a puzzle, a fragment of the consciousness that we perceive to be. And then we experience, and so we're able to elevate the whole, because consciousness always wants to grow. Energy always wants to grow, and energy is forever. It's just the way we perceive things to be. And so that's what we follow, this little path, and, we choose how big the path can be. Or we're capable of so much more than, that's the thing that is repeated over and over again. I use a phrase that came from the Bible about one of Jesus's sayings that the Plejarens really like. And that is, when Jesus was in this one time when he was healing all these people, at the end, he told everybody, you, the people of the earth, can do all that I can do and more. And that means that we're not limited. We're in our infancy at this point. And so, they're not that physically different than us, these Plejarens. And they 20 minutes, 2 times a day, they'll sit and they won't necessarily sleep, and it's not necessarily meditation. It's something in between that. And where they can, people can have contact with them in a sense too, which is related. It's kind of interesting, but that's downtime, and that's all they need. The rest of the time they're working, and they're totally focused on what it is that they're doing, because they love that so much. I love life. I love having these experiences, and I really don't give a crap what anybody else thinks about them. I'm releasing my experience and my individual, connection with these different people. And there's value to it. I know there is. And it's just like what I tell people, there are no gurus. There's nobody that's more advanced than you. What it is like, yeah, there's all these amazing people out there that have amazing things to tell, right? And to speak of and experiences. And some of them you'll resonate with and some of them you won't. Keep the ones that resonate with you and make that part of you, because everybody is their own master. And everybody is a master of something. I don't care who you are, you're old-fashioned housewife with kids and grandkids and stuff like that, or else you're this super tech individual that thinks he knows everything about quantum mechanics or something that does create wonderful things. So it doesn't really matter. Each one of us is a master of our domain.
So far, you've written about 5 books on the subject of your contact experiences with the Plejarens, or called the Plejaren Diaries. And what do you think is the difference between what you put into the books and your experience with the Plejarens?
Well, when I first started having the contact and everything, I told specific people in my life about it, and people that are close to me and things, and they were coming up with tons of questions. And so it was like, I'm repeating myself here a lot, and like it was kind of reminding me of my conversations with the Plejarens, right? And so I decided, well, I'll just write a book, and I have notes. I keep notes. I kept notes from the very beginning, because it was kind of unbelievable to me what was happening, and I knew it was real. It was the problem was having myself accept what was taking place, I think, because it was so foreign. But I've understood that. I've been in experiences like in the temples and stuff where it's out of the mind. Some of them even crazier than what this is, but I know those to be real. And so I kept notes, and I decided to write the book in order to give everybody a book. That way, once they read the book, they would have a better idea of how to ask a question. Again, like with the Plejarens, show them movies, and then they had more qualified questions. And people started reading it, and they liked that. And I wrote it not in a way that you would expect. I wrote my diary, basically. And what I remember and the thing is I remember so much in detail of what takes place, yet I still write the notes. And in those notes in my diary, I found there was so much information that it was hard to always remember when I was having a conversation with somebody to tell them all the things that were happening next, and it would become overwhelmed. Now, so I wrote it as a very personal book about me and them and the truth, right? And it was my experience. You can't relate this to other stories that you've heard because it doesn't make sense. And I evolved in the process of writing these books where I thought one thing was right, and then later I find out it's different. So I write the difference that I found. Also, I leave in there the nuggets, the very valuable tools that I found that they've shared with me that we need and that we can use. But I don't put it down, oh, this is something you should try. I don't do that, because if it doesn't resonate with the individual when they're reading it, then it's kind of useless. And like the sensing thing that I talked about, it's not easy for a lot of people. And see, I've never realized this. Like in the beginning, I used to, people ask me about meditation. I go, it's real simple. You're a computer and you got a plug in the wall. Unplug the plug and you're in meditation. People didn't get that. They needed a process to go through in order to figure out how to do a meditation. So therefore, unless it resonates, then they're not going to see it. But people have a tendency to reread the books over and over again. And the reason it's so easy for me to write these is because, like, if say you're a guy and you go do a guy day where you all go fishing, there's like 4 of you, and you go out fishing, you have a great day, and all these things occur, and you camp at night and everything, and then come home. And so it's in your mind, right, what just took place, and it's very obvious. And you can write in detail. It's not like you have to make shit up, right? It's already in your head. It's a memory. And so to recall that is very easy. And that's why I got so much information so fast from these people. And it was easy for me to write this. I would take my notes, I'd sit down, and one day it took me around 20 some hours to write one of the books. And so I guess that's a lot to write 5 full books in less than a year. And everybody seems to like them, and it just kept growing. So, and I can talk with authority about any of this stuff, but I won't compare it to other people's experiences because everybody has something different. I do go into the point of, like, some people have a soul contract to have a physical experience, and some people chose to avoid that and move on into the mind experience. But eventually, whatever it is that you find is the one that's going to connect you to whatever it is that's actually going on. And then it's going to amplify where you are having a physical experience, you are having a mind experience, and so on and so forth. And there was a time when I thought that, not too long ago, that I went through this transition. It's like, oh my God, I'm having a mind experience, because when me and Sam Jess would connect, we're a quantum entanglement in a sense, and basically her TV show and my TV show became one, and of course I'm the star of the show now. But anyway, we are the same being. And, being that, we have similar experiences and we travel. I don't know what it is and how it connects, but I call it traveling. Some people call it out of body experience. And I started to think, well, I'm having the physical experience, and now it's led to having a mind experience along with a physical experience. But I was wrong there too, because I am still physical. I realized that in the thing that you would think of as mind, or I guess some people could put it in a box and call it quantum, because so many different things occur in that process. You're the observer and the experiencer. You're also the source, while these things are taking place, and being able to distinguish which one is which kind of becomes spaghetti. It all gets blended together, and it's better just to go with the experience and what's happening, to make it, to understand that what's happening to you has effects, both mentally and physically.
See, we've known each other for over 30 years now. And you've had so many experiences in life so far. You've done so many things, so many extraordinary things. And you wind up living half your time up there with the Plejarens, half your time down here. And how do you keep sane? How do you manage to be up there with such wonderful seeming people and then come back down here to earth and see all of this destruction, all of these wars, all of this, everything that's going on to bring humanity down? How do you reconcile that? Or can you reconcile that in your mind?
All the crazy people that and me, how do you stay sane? Knowing my adventures and other people's adventures, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we see destruction all around us, yet we manage to stay sane. Yeah. And it's the same thing with them. I mean, yeah, it's beautiful, it's stress-free and all that, but also I know that I'm human, I was born here, and I have a purpose here, evidently, because I chose to be born here as this. Even though I'm a projection, it is my TV show, and I know there was a purpose behind the creation of that TV show. And so I feel obligated to that, but I also feel obligated to them. Yeah, they would like me to be there more often, but I want to be here too, because the quest is important to me, and it's just my reasons alone, about what I want to do in humanity. And I don't need to be recognized or anything else, but it feels like that's one of my purposes in life is, my charities. So, and then being with them is also a responsibility to me. So I just make it happen.
Well, see, we know you've written 5 books. Do you think you're going to write any more? We're waiting. We're anxiously waiting for another book.
I probably will. I've got enough for 10 books now. But I when I write the books, through my notes, there's a lot of stuff that I do leave out, and it all has to be approved, from them, because if I was to mistakenly share something that could alter something, I mean, even the smallest little thing, then that could cause a problem. And so I have everything that I write is seen amongst the Plejarens. And so far they've only denied a couple of little things, and they're insignificant. I don't question. Like when I'm with them, whatever they tell me is the rule, right? And I do whatever they tell me to do. And when they're here, it's vice versa. Whatever I tell them to do, they do, and without question. And so anyway, in relation to writing the books, there are people out there that think that there's a lot of money in books, and there isn't. There are exceptions to the rule because of the way it's marketed and that sort of thing. You can imagine anybody, when you see the authors in the grocery store books, right? That sort of thing. Those people make money, but essentially, they're profit isn't a big deal. And so I had no intent from the very beginning to ever profit from this, but any money that comes in, all of it goes into the quest, or ending child sex slavery, and it goes into rescues and other types of things related to that, like the security, the paperwork, that sort of stuff that is necessary. Gasoline for the transports, that sort of anything related to them. That's where the money all goes. And another thing to understand is that we don't have a payroll. There's around 200 of us as far as logistics and military type people, and then we have around 500 other volunteers that are in these countries that overwatch for us. Nobody is paid. There is, and there never will be, as far as I'm concerned, unless there's a certain requirement from a foundation for a donation or whatever. But anyways, so all the profits and proceeds from the books go directly to the quest.
I'm just overwhelmed. My brain is just kind of fried, I guess. Now here is, I wanted to show you one of Z's books. This is the 5th book, and this is the Om that is made from Z's voice. And if you want to read the books, you can get them from Amazon. Go to the Plejaren Diaries, or look up Zaysan Saldusky. That's S-A-L or Z-A-Y-S-A-N. Saldusky is S-A-L-D-A-U-S-K-Y. And I really encourage people to read the books because, like Z said, people are going through these books over and over. I know I've marked mine up just all over the place, for these nuggets. And these nuggets will jump out at you if it's something you need, if it's something that resonates with your heart and with your own unconditional love. It's just amazing what these books are bringing forward. And there's nobody that I've run across that has had exactly or anything close to what you've been able to live a life with, that's so out of our program. I mean, it's just so hard sometimes to wrap your head around what you're going through. But I do encourage you to keep writing your books. And there's a lot of things on YouTube. There's the books on Amazon. Just jump into it and take off with it, because you won't be bored. I can guarantee you that. Dan?
I did some YouTube videos. It's the channel is Plejaren Diaries, and I did a series of videos, some with people and some on my own, that if people are interested, they should check out. Also, I got an email, it's on Proton. What is it? Plejaren Diaries, proton mail.com. I think it's on the book there. It's on each one of my books.
Thank you guys so much for making this possible. I'm really grateful to be a part of it. And thank you again, Zaysan. Thank you, Annie, for doing this interview.